Today at Salvador's, we're going to break down a whole chicken. We're going to talk about chicken 8 ways. We're also going to talk about removing the actual collarbone. We're going to talk about really making sure you use your knife to angle it towards the bone so you get a nice, consistent product, but also so you actually get the maximum yield of meat off of the actual chicken. Now, the first step we're actually going to take is to remove the wishbone. So if you look in here, the wishbone area is right in here, and if you feel with your fingers, it's almost like a little bit of a triangle. I'm going to take the tip of my knife. I'm going to go in, and my angle of my blade is right towards the bone, and then there's a little bit of cartilage that connects down towards the backbone area. The same thing else, I'm going to go down, I'm going to find the bone, cut right on top of it and towards the actual bone, and then I'm going to push down. You can see here, you can see the bone a little bit. Take your knife to the back of it, you can kind of scrape a bit and see that bone is right in there. That's the actual wishbone. And you can kind of put your finger behind it like that, and that kind of lets you know exactly where the bone's at. Same thing on the other side. I'm going to push that meat back a bit with the back of my knife. And then I'm just going to push on the meat, squeezing between my fingers to make sure I actually have the bone exposed. Now, it does not matter if you snap this bone in half while you're doing this. I'm going to also cut the cartilage at the bottom to make sure it's not still connected to the actual carcass. And now I have the bone exposed. You can see it there. I'm going to pinch back towards the top of it. I'm just going to push, 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 and then it's going to come out just like that, nice and clean. But again, does not matter if it breaks, so don't worry about that. So I have the actual top of the chicken facing towards me. I'm going to turn it around. I'm right-handed, so I actually start on the left side of it. And when I do, there's actually something we call the keel bone or the breastplate bone right down the middle. You can kind of see the line here. And I'm going to take my actual blade and I'm going to angle it towards here just like this. Now, when I start at the tip, well, the heel of the knife, and I go all the way to the tip. So you'll see I kind of make an incision at first, and I go right on the top, angling towards that bone, and then I feel it with my hands. I repeat the process. So break the skin, tip of the knife. I'm kind of pushing lightly on the bone to make sure I'm not losing any meat off of there. And then I simply use my hand to kind of open it up. My thumb is kind of pushing on the meat, make sure I have a nice understanding of where I'm going. Now, when you're doing this, you want to make sure that the whole time you have your knife and you angle it, you want to make sure you angle it towards the breastplate, towards the rib bones. So I'm taking my knife and I'm actually going and I'm angling it that way. If you put too much pressure, you will cut through it. That's fine. Don't worry about it. You can simply just keep cutting and continue. But use those bones as your friend. I'm kind of scraping on the bones. The scraping sign is definitely what you want to hear. There's a joint here. I'm going right in between that joint. Now that I've done that, I'm going to turn the chicken a little bit just so you can see it. And I'm actually going to put it on the side. And there's some skin in here between the leg and the actual breast. And I'm just going to simply cut in between there, not to cut the thigh meat or the breast meat. I'm laid on its side, and I'm simply going to go right down the back. There's a scapula here, so I'm just going to right down the side of it. And you can kind of see that bone right there being exposed. And I'll make sure I get all that meat off the actual carcass. So that's what this side looks like. No meat left there, no meat left there. I've gone in between the joints, I've taken the meat off there. You want that, that's ideal. Now, we'll put that aside for 1 second. We have our breast. As you can see, it has quite a bit of excess skin. You can definitely save that. You can render it, you can put it on a sheet tray, a little bit of salt, 350, until it's nice and crispy. It's almost like a chicken chip, it's great. And then you have the breast, which just has this joint here. In between the joint, there's actual socket, pocket there, so you can see this little bit of connective tissue, that area right there. I'm going to take my actual tip of my knife, and I'm going to start slightly cutting away from the breast, not to cut into the breast meat, and I'm turning the wing as I'm doing it. And I'm kind of turning to pull it away, and I want to make sure that all of this meat here stays on the breast. And you can see it kind of has this little bit of almost like a hook shape in here. You want that, that's ideal. If you have excess skin here, cut that off. Again, you save that, can render it for smalts or for crispy little chicken skin. But that's going to be our breast. It's really just a simple breast. It's got the skin on. If you want the skin off, you can just literally pull it off, holding down your knife just like that. It comes off very easily. And again, you can save that skin. The skin has a ton of really good flavor. And you just crisp that up on a sheet tray. You have your wing. Now, our wing has 3 different parts. From this angle, you can see a little bit better. We have our wing tip, we have our mid joint, and then we have our drum mat. Now, the drum mat, its nickname comes from the actual drumstick. So you can kind of see they resemble. You have a smaller version, a larger version. So drum mat, drumstick, mid joint, wing tip. If you're doing something we call party wings, which are really great for if you're watching sports or you're just at home, you want to have some nice barbecue wings or buffalo style wings, you can simply cut them between the joints. And you would actually separate those 3 sections of the wing. You use this little wing tip for your stocks, or you crisp those up in the oven too, and that little bit of flap of meat is really great. That little skin there gets nice and crispy, a little bit of salt, and it's really great if you just want to have a little snack while you're waiting for the wings to cook. But these here would be your party wings. So you have your drumette and your mid joint, some people call it the 2-boner, and you just roast those up or fry them, toss them in sauce, and you're good to go. But that's if you want to order them party style or party wings instead of having that little tip. Okay, so when I'm separating the rest of the breast from the actual carcass, I turn it towards me because I'm right-handed, so I have my left side on my left side at all times. So when I cut here, the left side's on the left side, and then the left side with the meat's on there. If you notice, there's that little bit of cartilage in there, and that's that keel bone we talked about. And then I'm simply going to take my knife on this side and I'm angling it towards it. Notice the angle here, angling it towards it. When I get to this section here, I want to actually make sure that I go in with my knife and then come back out. But just the tip of it, so I come in and I come right back towards the bone or the cartilage there. And I'm ideally trying to get all of this excess meat within here that you can see. I'm trying to remove all of that meat to make sure I don't leave any of that on the actual breastplate. I got a little bit of cartilage still hanging on, strong little cartilage. And again, I'm just kind of following the same fundamentals. I'm angling my knife inwards, letting my knife really scrape against those bones. If you go through it, that's fine. Do not worry. Just simply keep going, and you're good to go. Now, when you open it up, it has a curvature towards the ribs, so really get down in that area too. And then when you're separating the joint muscle's right there, that little kind of white dot there, you want to go in between there, and that separates that section. I like to lay it on the side. Some people don't. It's whatever you prefer, but it helps me see when I lift the actual breast meat, helps me see where I'm going. So I lift it up, I separate the actual skin from between the thigh and the wing. I sit it on the side just like that. Now my breast meat is away from the actual carcass. I don't risk cutting into it. And then I simply go right on the side, and I go right on top of that bone there, that scapula. And the scraping sound is super ideal. I'm going right next to that joint, and I'm separating it there. So when you look at this angle, I've removed all of that meat in here, all of that meat in there. I've taken the meat from the bottom section here and the bottom section there. And that's what you want for that. Going back, you'll see all that meat there. Mind you, I want to keep that on the breastplate. So I'm still following the same fundamental. I'm going to make sure that I go in between that pocket where the joint's at, cutting away from the breast so I don't lose any meat. And as I'm cutting, I'm kind of being very cautious to kind of turn this wing as I'm cutting. So I'm cutting in towards that little joint, and I'm turning it away, slightly turning it, and I'm being very cautious not to lose any of this meat. You see all that meat staying on the actual breast, and then I have my nice little wing here. Now we're going to separate the actual leg from the actual carcass, which is really a fun part of it. I'm actually using my hand quite a bit. My hand's going to go underneath this thigh area, and it's going to put my thumb right here, almost what looks like the kneecap area, and then I'm going to push like this. The back end, I'm going to use this pressure of my thumb to hold it down. Holding it down, and the top end is going to pop it. And you'll see a joint come out in this area. So knife steer to hold that side of the bird down. I pop the joint out. You can see the joint right there, a little white cartilage there. And now I've taken it out of the socket. I put it on the side. And now I have something called the oyster muscle. The oysters are great. Tons of good flavor, really tender, desired cut, delicious. We call them the oyster because the actual bone that it sits on almost looks like the top of an oyster shell. We'll show you in 1 second. But when you're cutting that off, you want to start with that. You want to watch where the muscle goes. So this muscle goes right up here. You want to make an incision right on top of that. I'm always using the bone as an indicator, so I have that bone there, and I'm kind of scraping on top of there. And then I'm scooping with my thumb just to remove all that meat. And then I have it kind of on the side of it, and I'm just kind of taking from the heel to the tip of my knife, and I'm just cutting. And I'm cutting inwards towards the pelvis. The pelvis is going to curve, so I started here, and it's curving now inward. And I'm just going to cut inward towards the pelvis. So when you want to remove the other leg, again, I'm right-handed, so I just simply turn it to the other side. I hold this down. I take my hand, I'm going to push like this, but hold my thumb here to hold the knee kind of area. I pop the joint. You can see it's right in there now. It's popped out. I lay it on the side. I start with the heel of my knife. I open that up, I kind of really scoop that oyster out, and then I go right down, and I'm gonna go inward towards the pelvis now. So I'm just using the tip of my knife, and I'm just allowing the knife to do the work. The whole time I feel my knife on the actual backbone of the carcass, and then I just separate the two. Now, ideally, you've done it where you have this nice curvature again. That's ideal. That's how you know you've done it right. If it's straight, that means you've left some meat on the carcass, and you don't want that. Now that you've seen that, you want to go back and you want to actually remove some of this skin off of the back. Right there, that's crispy skin for when you cook it off. It's really tasty stuff. There's some skin in here, the visceral area of the actual carcass. I remove that skin because when I roast these bones and I make a stock, I do not want all that oil releasing into the broth. I ideally want a nice clear broth. You definitely are welcome to add the skin and have it a little bit more fatty. That's fine too, whatever you prefer. I actually cut my carcass right down the middle of it. I separate those two, and that actually helps me when I'm roasting it. I roast one side and then I roast the other. If I leave it whole, what happens is the middle steams and I don't get the caramelization that I want. So I really try to make sure that I get that section nice and brown on both sides. And then this little tip area, you can take some of that fat off too. And that's also fat that's good to render nice and crispy skin on there too. So to review, let's kind of rebuild this little section here. We'll take the backbone away. We'll separate our leg and our drumsticks. So there's a line of fat here that you can see, and you're simply just going to cut straight down that line. And it's going to give you a nice separation between the joints. You don't have to use a cleaver or anything. It's really kind of nicely done. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go right on top of this line, that fat line, and I'm just going to cut right on top of there. I have my separation there. So now I have my thigh, my drumstick, thigh and drumstick. One side of the breast is the other side of the breast. And then I have my wing on this side, and I have my wing on that side. Let's rebuild the wing a little bit. It's good as new, right? Still fly away. This little bone here doesn't count, but it's good to see it. So this is chicken 8 ways. You do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as a whole piece. Now, again, just to review, definitely take your time. I would recommend you start with a chicken if you really want to learn how to start to do butchery. If you want to practice at home, chickens really are a good sized animal. They give you really good control of how to hold your knife, how to control the angle of the blade on the bone. They also give you a good appreciation for butchery as well. This chicken in particular came from G&L Farms right outside of Quebec. Really happy chickens. When we say happy chickens, we're referring to good quality, humanely raised, good feed, and just allowed to grow naturally versus being kind of pumped up with anything. So really good quality. Some of our favorite chicken here, the G&O chicken. You got to try it if you're in the shop. We do fried chicken, so if you're ever in the city and you're stopping by, Tuesdays in the Cambridge store, Friday in the Boston store, fried chicken, G&O, lovely stuff. Thanks for joining us. If you have questions, please leave comments, visit our YouTube channel. Definitely write us if you're feeling like you have any questions or concerns. We're definitely here to help you out, and we'll see you again. Thank you.